Today we're going to be starting a new series here in December about Christmas, and we're going to kick it off with a potentially controversial one among parents is, should you tell your kids about Santa?
Oh yeah.
So
Big
some people are all about it. Some people think it's sinful to deceive your children.
I mean, it
Let's
is
talk
coincidental
about it.
that Santa has the same letters as Satan.
Oh, that's what it's
That
about.
can't be simply a coincidence. But yeah, well, I want to come out because this is something that I thought about even like as a high school and college student.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, is that what if I had kids, would I tell them about Santa? Does that like lead people to think that like God isn't real? Like, is it sinful? Is it lie? Whatever. So I think it's important to consider. And I just want to come out of the closet at the beginning as I'm a Santa supporter. Like, I definitely think if you want to tell your kids about Santa, go for it. Like, so I want to go through and make some arguments, kind of respond to some common arguments against this idea of a fantasy element in Christmas, and then a couple of thoughts as to why it could be a good thing.
Cool.
And I think you could embrace it. Again, like from the beginning, there's no moral element here. Like, if you don't want to tell your kids about Santa, then don't. Who cares? Please ruin it for the rest of us parents. No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't care. So let's talk about some arguments against Santa. So, of course, the biggest argument that we'll hear very often is, well, that's lying to your kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've heard that here and there. Well, I think this is actually a pretty easy one to respond to, which is like it's called pretending. It's called fantasy. And it's weird to me that we seem to not, like, we act as if we don't know that that's a thing.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, all the time with my kids from when they're very little, we'll do I'm pulling off their nose, right? You like hold their arms down, you pull off their nose, you know, and it's funny to me how my kids actually figure that out pretty quickly. They'll do it to me, and I'm like, I see what you're doing. But for a while there, like, they really believe that. Oh my goodness, you know, making their stuffed animals talk. Well, I'll do that, right? There's like a level of like a desire, a suspension of disbelief for a little kid that they're like, oh, this is good fun, or just playing make believe at all, right? But those are things that are normal, and what I don't always do is stop and say, hey, just to be clear, I do not have, part of your body in my hand right now. Like, it's really just my finger or all that. Like, and parents who do that are lame parents. Like, your kids should have a level of make-believe, play, fantasy. So I do think now there's a line you can go to with trying to make the Santa thing work that's just maybe unhealthy. We've heard of like 15-year-olds who still believe in Santa. Like, okay, well, they've grown out of the little kid stage. They should have a very long time ago come to that realization. And so you don't need to go to like these elaborate lengths. But just like a 5-year-old, allowing them to have some fun and believe in that, I think is great.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that gets to the heart of your intention with Santa is you're not intending to deceive them for their harm or something. You're just wanting to have some fun thing, basically.
Like, even when my kids have started asking my daughter, it's like, is Santa real? And I'll just be like, well, what do you think? And she'll be like, I don't know how he could deliver all those presents. I'm like, oh, that's a good point. And I just kind of leave it up, and I'm not trying to convince them forever. What I found was funny, though, and I don't know if I'm the only parent to experience this, but my daughter kind of figured out the Santa thing without us we never like instilled that or talked about it or anything.
Yeah.
And then she was like picking up on it as like a 2 and 3-year-old, and then eventually started believing it. So we just kind of had fun with that. But one of my biggest problems with Santa is he gets credit for my.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
So, and then along with that, a whole idea of like lying to kids is, people will say like, oh, you're going to teach them that God is not real, right? Like an invisible man who knows everything. Well, I have yet to meet the person who stopped believing in God because of Santa. Like, again, we can just like, we're not like, no one's that low IQ. Like, we can distinguish between this is play and this is something that is real. So that one, I wouldn't see that as a valid argument. Yeah. But what about the second one, which is Jesus should be the center of Christmas, not Santa? We've heard this one a lot, right? The issue is really about keeping Christ at the center. And of course, I agree with that. Like, And I've, in preparation for this video, asked my second born, you know, hey, what is Christmas about? Is Christmas about Santa? And he was like, no, it's about Jesus. I'm like, okay, good. So
Nice.
I think there's a way to like have that fun element, but you can have the same problem with many things. Here, let me read to you an argument. This is from John Piper, who I love. He's read so many of his books, heard many of his sermons, obviously seen him preach live. But he says this: I regard the effort of Christian parents to lay the Santa Claus story over the Jesus story as a failure to be thrilled with the greatest story in the world, and a failure of imagination for how to speak about the real story and show the real story in a way that helps children share our amazement. It's a failure. It's a syncretistic compromise with culture. Poor Jesus, he's invisible. Santa Claus is not. You can see him at the mall. Poor Jesus doesn't make any rounds on a sled in the sky, leaving toys under the tree. Okay, so that I'm trying to steelman this argument. Like, this is a really respected pastor, but I think it's not one or the other. That you could easily say the point of Christmas is not the Christmas dinner and all the trappings. It's Jesus. Or it's not about the presents, it's about Jesus. It's not about family, it's about Jesus. And we'd all say amen to all those things. And yet it is possible to have enjoyment and actually to worship God through all these other elements and all these good things that we do. So you could be spending 10 hours and neglecting your family to prep that meal and neglecting worshiping God, but you don't have to. Like, you can find ways to truly enjoy the season and worship God and keep him at the center while also having fun things. So
Right.
I do think it's possible to have fun with Santa and still exalt Jesus as the focus of Christmas.
I think that's an important part of, parenting children is showing that the Christmas story is an exciting thing.
Yeah.
Because I think that's John Piper's concern, is that I guess the intention for Santa is because the Jesus story is kind of boring, but Santa's really exciting. And that would be problematic if we actually thought that Santa was more exciting than Jesus. But obviously his work is far more important than anything Santa does, and the fact that he's actually real.
So so take that as a real concern.
Yeah.
And be careful about it. But yeah, my kids, I think they know what's
get
really
it.
central.
Yeah.
I mean, my 4-year-old, it's like he doesn't, or I guess he's 3, almost 4, but yeah, he doesn't know a whole lot of what's going on. He's still just kind of just living the dream, and but
Bliss,
he's not a
ignorance is
believer.
bliss.
He's not a true believer. So, okay, let's move on. So I think this is kind of related. The third objection, which would be Santa isn't spiritual enough.
Mm-hmm.
Santa isn't spiritual enough. But again, I think my response with that would be, like, there's a lot of things that we use to celebrate Christmas that aren't spiritual at all. And so I don't think we have to get into this mode of, if this isn't a Christian song, I'm not going to listen to it. Or if, the food, the pies, the all this stuff, like, we have to avoid it. No, I just think we have to keep the most central thing central and guard that. But no, I think it's fine to have some general fun in Christmas, especially with little kids. Another one, it distracts from the real meaning of Christmas. It's funny, when I was a kid, it wasn't Santa that distracted from the real meaning of Christmas. It was the presents. Like, what was I idolizing? It was those presents, and I wanted to open them and all that stuff. Santa is just the vessel for the presents.
Yeah.
It's still a problem when you're 7, 8, and you don't believe in Santa anymore, and you still just like, I want to open the presents. I don't care about Jesus or whatever. So that idolatry hit its peak after I knew Santa wasn't real. So again, totally legitimate concern, and as parents we should be wise, but I don't think we have to throw out any sort of fantasy play.
Yeah, another one that I just thought of that kind of we touched on already, but I feel like is worth thinking about is that when we give gifts to our kids and then say Santa got it for them, then Santa's getting the credit for the gifts that we got for our kids. Yeah. And so I feel like in some ways that is a slight disadvantage to consider of, well, isn't this a great way to lead by example to show that we're generously giving gifts to our kids and we're showing that we love them and it's not just some man who flies around one night a year, So like, I guess I just think of that as being maybe one of the more pragmatic concerns maybe.
Yeah, I think that's true. I don't think that kids know, like 4 and 5-year-olds don't have any understanding of how much sacrifice is in that gift.
Yeah.
They have no framework for it. I do think later on they're going to look back and say, wow, my parents really tried to make a good Christmas experience. And for me personally, I'm thankful that my parents allowed us to have that fun, silly belief. I mean, I found out when I was 5, right? Or 4. I think my brother told me. What a jerk. But, I didn't have it very long, but it was a fun element. And then when it's like you see other kids go through it and stuff. So, no, I think looking back too, you could also say, yeah, the parents don't need to take credit for it because they just want the kid to have a great time too. So, but it's something to consider. Again, these are all things we consider as parents, and we all make our own choices, and that's legit. What about some positive arguments for Santa? This has never been done before. No one's ever done it before. I've never heard it.
I don't
it's
think
always
I have
just
either.
like, is it sinful or is it neutral? And again, I don't think it's like a positive good you have to do, but I think there's one main reason, but the first reason I would say is just kind of more general and lighthearted. But having fun and engaging in fantasy is great for kids. Like, kids play. They do these fun things. So in other words, don't be a lame parent. That's what I would say. Don't be lame. Mm-hmm. No one wants a parent that's overthinking everything, and everything has to be very literal and very structured. And you got to give kids some freedom, some fun. It's okay to make believe. That'd be one. That's pretty low in importance.
Yeah.
But the second, I would say, it's more important, is Christians. I think sometimes we don't take advantage of the traditions of our culture. There are so many things in our culture that are so disheartening as a Christian, that are so wicked, and they turn away from God. The Christmas season, though, actually presents a really amazing opportunity for Christians. Mm-hmm. And it's weird to me that Christians often look down on the focus that our culture places on Christmas, because I see it as a huge opportunity to reach people with the gospel. So, can fun things in our culture about Christmas and this kind of feeling we get because of all of the traditions, does that lead people to Jesus? Absolutely. So I would say that, when I go into a Starbucks and I get a Christmas drink and it's like decorated for Christmas, and I'll often hear like explicitly Christian songs being played. Or when I watch The Grinch, the animated Grinch with Butterscotch, what's his name? Benedict Cumberbatch. I always call him Butterscotch Crumble Cakes, but not even close. But they actually sing parts of God Rest You Merry Gentlemen, and they keep saying, remember Christ our Savior was born on Christmas Day. Like it says, this is like 4 times in the secular movie. Yeah. I'm like, man, when else are you going to see that? Yeah. That there's the name of Christ in popular entertainment, in popular culture, and people don't actually get upset by it very often. Yeah. So I just think there's a big opportunity here, and someday these traditions that we have in our culture, they may not exist. Like, we look down on it because we're like, well, it's the secular world is taking advantage of Christmas. Yeah, I get it. But someday Christmas will be replaced with the 30-second LGBTQ celebration of the year, right? Like, we're just getting more and more and more, and instead of Santa, it'll be Harvey Milk delivering presents to the children or something. That obviously is a trend that's I'm joking, right? But that's a trend that's developing, and there are people that would love to see some of these Christian traditions displaced. And I just think while we have that, we have an opportunity, and we should embrace the power of that. And so don't just throw the baby out of the bathwater. I think enjoy some of these cultural traditions that really do kind of connect with the real meaning of Christmas. And of course, we could talk about, it's been done many times, but talk about the history of St. Nicholas and how he was a Christian figure and how he did display generosity and all that. And so I know my wife has read books with our kids about that, about the real Santa, But that's just some thoughts. I think, again, for you, if you're a parent or if you're going to be a parent someday, it's a choice for you to make. And your kid won't probably be scarred either way. I haven't seen it. It's not earth-shattering, but maybe these are helpful things to consider. So leave comments. Tell me how much of a heretic I am. I always love that. Tell me how wrong I am. What do you think? Have I convinced you, Mikey? Are you going to tell your kids someday about Santa?
I don't know. I need to talk to my wife about that. Okay. But I'm not. I'm not unconvinced. I grew up being told about Santa, and so I'm not. I don't know.
But you also grew up not Christian,
right.
So I grew up in a Christian household, so I saw kind of how we did that and like that balance. But
yeah, so there's, a lot I'll have to figure out.
Yeah,
But.
Awesome. Well, comment if you're going to tell your kids about Santa now, or if you're going to ruin their childhood. We'd love to hear that.
Yep.
Thanks so much for watching this video. We're uploading great biblical content every single week, so make sure you subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment down below. We'd love to discuss with you. If you want to support us financially, there's a link in the description of this video. Thanks so much.